Hi, I'm Asher Remy Toledo, and I'm here today with Janet Biggs. And Janet is an American artist based in New York. She works at the intersection of science, technology, and humanity in its more core essence. She's currently working with CERN and NASA and has traveled to some of the most remote areas of the planet where living conditions are extreme. Janet has created unlikely, mind-blowing collaborations between humans and technology that include bionic performers, artificial intelligence entities, neuroscientists, volcanologists, musicians, composers, and vocalists. Welcome, Janet. Very excited to have you here. After Janet, we have also a conversation with Anouk Wiprecht, the Dutch fashion tech designer based in New York. And we are gonna, after that, we're gonna have a conversation between the three of us. Okay, which I hope that you guys stay for it. Hi, Janet. How are you doing? Good, good.
I'm good, thanks, Asher. Um,
So,
and uh, and actually, what I will say is I'm really excited to be here, even if it's virtually here, because I have such incredible memories of the Festival of the Image and my time in the past in Manizales, and hope very much that someday we can do that again in person.
yes, it would be great to be able to go back. Um, so, and I think at the end of the presentation today, you wanted to show us the excerpts of a video that you started to make in Manizales. Is that true?
It's actually it is a clip that I made in kind of preparation for a larger piece, which would demand that I physically go back to Manizales. So yeah, I'm happy to show a short clip of something I made after the last trip.
Great. To be continued then. So that's pretty exciting. So, what are you going to show us today?
Well, I thought I would take you through a bit of my past work and into what I'm currently working on. So I think I'll just take it away. Um, as an interdisciplinary artist, I work primarily at the intersection of art and science, and that gives me the ability to collaborate with a wide range of both institutions and individuals. I have had the honor of working with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I have worked with NASA. I have been able to go to CERN and work both in the Hadron Collider and at the CMS experiment. I've gotten to work with neuroscientists, with volcanologists, with astrophysicists, with aeronautic engineers, and a robot whose name is Shimon. And I am overly privileged in the fact that I have been able to travel this globe to produce this work. I have been able to film in the high Arctic of Svalbard and spent 3 months up there filming. I've also filmed at Mars, or at least as close as one can get to Mars right now. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I filmed inside of an active volcano in Indonesia and in areas of conflict in the Horn of Africa. And in the Taklamakan Desert of Western China on the border of Afghanistan. And along the way, I have not only had to increase my knowledge of areas of science and technology, but I've also had to learn some other skills, like how to film on the back of a camel, sitting forward, sideways, and backwards, how to film inside of a spacesuit. I've learned how to intubate and extubate, which is, hurtfully appropriate right now. But I've also, I can now boast that I can suture in microgravities. But all of this is really in the pursuit of trying to understand how an individual defines a sense of themselves, and especially within the face of the extreme. And for me, the extreme is everything from a landscape like this on the edge of a volcano with an open lava lake, or a situation like a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. My work is generally large-scale immersive installations that have choreographed imagery and movement throughout them. And I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about one specific project that it's called the Space Between Fragility Curves. And a fragility curve is actually, it's a statistical analysis of a structure and its ability to withstand a seismic shift. For the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I've been participating in and filming Mars simulation missions. Around the globe, different agencies from private sector to public organizations, you know, from NASA to SpaceX, from the Mars Society to Mars Academy USA, are running Mars simulations, and they're in analog environments. International groups of scientists are brought together and asked to conduct research in this analog environment in the hope of one day being able to do the same thing on Mars. After participating in a number of Mars simulations, I was on a panel, actually it was a panel on the arts and neuroscience, and I met I met Gil Weinberg. Gil is the head of the music technology department at Georgia Tech. And Gil is also an incredible jazz musician. And Gil has, he was bemoaning the fact that he could never get his band together to practice. So he started building robots that were musical robots. And every time, so he could practice with a, you know, with a larger band, a robotic band. But every time he would practice, you know, the robot would do exactly what he had built it to do, and it was really boring. So he decided that he needed to build a robot with artificial intelligence so that it could surprise him. And at this stage, he now has a robot named Shimon, who essentially has like the wealth of music history programmed into Shimon and has aural input, sound input. So Shimon can hear any other musician and then improvise off of what he is, the entity he is hearing, and make surprising choices. And then it becomes a collaborative effort between human and technology, and human and robot. When I met Gil, I was really interested in whether Shimon could watch my film that I just finished making about a Mars simulation, and as he was watching the film, could he compose a score and play it? And Gil's response was, not yet. After about a year and a lot of work on changing the algorithm and the data sets to include visual mapping skills, this is the result. And I'm gonna let you watch a little excerpt from the project.
Great.
I'm going to take you back just a little bit to my history. I have an undergrad degree in sculpture and a minor in painting, and my graduate work was in glass blowing. But when I first got out of undergrads, I needed a day job, and I'm a lousy bartender. And so I ended up at the job placement board at my school, and there was a listing for someone to pour plaster, skills that I had. And it ended up being a prosthetic firm. So I spent the next about 20 years as a part-time day job making prosthetics and orthotics. Until I became a self-supporting artist that I felt like it was sort of fair game to go back and rethink the technology that I had been working on all those years. And I ended up doing a collaborative project with you, Asher, and presented by Hyphen Hub. And this is a performative project. And we workshopped it at the New Museum, the theater at the museum this past summer, and we're continuing to develop it. So we'll let you know for future performances. But the project features Jason Barnes, who is a drummer that lost his arm in a workplace accident. And he went to Gil Weinberg, and together they built this prosthesis that has 2 sticks instead of 1. One of the sticks Jason controls, and the other one has artificial intelligence and can hear what Jason is playing. And so it improvises off of Jason, which makes him the fastest drummer. You know, he can drum at speeds that far exceed any human capability, and he self-defines as a cybernetic drummer. We also worked with Brian Reynolds. Brian is a world record-holding marathon runner that happens to be a bilateral below knee amputee. Brian runs on carbon fiber running blades. And we actually, for the performance, we put Brian on a treadmill and then wrote a score, a percussive score of, you know, run for this amount of time at this speed, then go up to this speed and run for this amount of time and then back it down, as a way to make him a percussive element. We also worked with Mary Esther Carter, who's an incredible vocalist. And with Mary, with the help of and collaboration of Richard Savory, who's also at Georgia Tech, we built an AI voice. It's trained off of Mary's voice, but inspired by my Aunt Anne. I was guardian for my aunt who is severely autistic and obsessive compulsive. And Anne had apraxia, which is her vocal cords were intact, but there was a disconnect from her brain so that she could hum, she could make vocal, you know, she could vocalize, make vocal utterances, but she could never create language, never form language. And initially we built AI Anne, the entity, to just be able to vocalize and do a vocalization duet with Mary. But we're now in the process of expanding Anne's capabilities, AI Anne's capabilities. And we're interested in not only expanding the deep learning, but also the semantic knowledge so that AI Anne can respond emotionally. And this is an excerpt from the performance, the workshop performance that we did last summer.
On March 6th, I was able to send 3 minerals up to the International Space Station. And this project was done in collaboration with MIT Media Lab's Space Exploration Initiative. The minerals were housed inside of a payload that was built with 3 different layers. The first layer was benign so that it would experience 0 gravity, and the next 2 layers rotated at centripetal acceleration so that they mimicked lunar gravity and Martian gravity, respectively. So I was able to send a lunar meteorite that was found in the Western Sahara back up into space to experience lunar gravity. I also sent a red jasper crystal up into space. The crystal was found on a Mars simulation in Utah. So I referred to it as a Mars wannabe rock, and I was able to send it up so that it could experience Martian gravity for the very first time. And I also sent a halite crystal from my grandfather's mineral collection. My grandfather developed Alzheimer's disease when he was in his 80s. He was an amateur mineral collector, and long after he could remember or identify anyone in the family, he could still tell you really specific details from the minerals in his collection. So they held some of his very last memories. So I was able to send a crystal that held his last memories up into space and let it become weightless. So my minerals are on the International Space Station, and they're orbiting around the Earth 16 times per day. And below, the COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, is circling around the planet. My original idea was to stop my project once the minerals had reached the International Space Station. I really didn't think that this project was then going to address the current crisis with the pandemic, but I don't know how it can't. So right now, I'm just going forward with this project, not really knowing where it's going, but also not self-editing. I'm sure a lot of you know that the SpaceX just launched 2 humans up to the International Space Station. It took the capsule about 9 minutes to leave Earth's gravity and become weightless. That's about the same amount of time that it took for a police officer to press his knee down on George Floyd's neck and kill him. You know, we as humans, this is the best and the worst of who we are, and we need to be better. I really believe that we can affect real change through collaboration and through our shared humanity, that we can use technology to advance this change. My challenge to you is, what are you going to do? How are you going to affect change? How are you going to use your voice? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Janet. That was very beautiful. So, okay, now we go with our next guest.